One day, during an attempt to modify an Atari 2600, a freak accident caused a tear in the space-time continuum. Now, stuck in a partially collapsed infinite temporal loop, Duke is trying to repair the torn time fragments and get back to the present. Trapped within the Atari and accompanying him on his mission, the disembodied spirit of the 1980s, 9TAT, is helping Duke relive his childhood memories to repair the fractured timeline. If Duke cannot remember the key elements that shaped his childhood and escaped the temporal loop, then the 1980s will never have existed.
Alright, AT, we're set up for another time fragment repair session. So how are we doing anyway? I feel like lately we've made some major progress with the time loop repair. Are we looking good?
The time fragments that have been recovered so far have offered significant structural stability to the partially collapsed infinite temporal loop.
That sounds good.
However, we still have a lot of work to do if you want to restore the 1980s and return to the present. We must make haste.
Alright, calm down, Professor Time. Make haste. Who are you, Gandalf? Who talks like that?
I do.
Alright, well, what do we have today?
Do you remember live-action superhero shows?
I know I watched a ton of superhero stuff as a kid, but my memories are kind of fuzzy. But I'm sure you've got something that can help me out.
Dr. David Banner, physician, scientist, searching for a way to tap into the hidden strengths that all humans have. Then an accidental overdose of gamma radiation alters his body chemistry. And now when David Banner grows angry or outraged, a startling metamorphosis occurs.
All the world is waiting for you and the power you possess. In your satin tights, fighting for your rights and the old red, white, and blue. Wonder Woman. Look at what's happened to me. I can't believe it myself. Suddenly I'm up on top of the world. It should have been somebody else. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so free. Flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be? Believe it or not, it's just me.
The world's favorite comic book hero, followed by 84 million readers a year. Now, he comes alive. For the first time on the screen, you'll see it all. The spectacular adventures of the amazing Spider-Man. You've heard about him. You've read about him. Now, you'll see him in action. Look up high as one man does the impossible. He uses all his fantastic spider powers to battle the most evil forces ever imagined.
Oh my goodness, I do remember those. Wow. I remember watching that Hulk show. I love that show. And it's funny, I remember watching it as a kid, and you're sitting there waiting, like half the show was a bunch of adult stuff, like just talking and story and stuff, but you're sitting there waiting for the part where Bruce Banner got hurt. Because you knew when he got hurt, the Mean Green Machine came out and started throwing stuff around and growling and stuff. And, you know, he'd usually be laying on the ground, and then he'd, like, do this dramatic turn, and his eyes be all green, and he started ripping his clothes off. And the rest of the show, when the Hawk was like in slow motion. I guess it was a camera trick to make him seem bigger and heavier. But everything he did, he was throwing things. Man, what's his name? Lou Ferrigno. He was enormous, man. He was just chock full of muscles. And there's this funny story. My mom still tells it to this day. She tells this story all the time where she was in her bedroom and she heard all this commotion in the backyard. And from her window, she could see the backyard. And she looked out and all this stuff was flying out of the shed. And I emerged from the shed holding like my big wheel above my head, just Rah! And she said I was saying, I am the Hawk. And I was throwing all this stuff out of the shed, trying to act like the Hawk. And I'll never forget, there's this one episode where the Hawk got into a fight with a bear. And he picked the bear up and chucked it into the sky. It was like flipping over in the sky. And of course it crashes down into the water and Hawk's like, Rah! And it was just a fantastic show. But I also remember it was like kind of sad. Like at the end of every episode, you had this kind of famous music at this point. I think it's called The Lonely Man. And, you know, Bruce Banner's always kind of walking away with his head down, his backpack on, and plays that piano music. And you can't think of the Hawk without thinking of that song. And then there was Wonder Woman. I'm not ashamed. I watched it. I mean, why not? It was a superhero show with action and fighting and whatnot. But I even remember as a kid thinking how stunning Linda Carter was as Wonder Woman. And one episode comes to mind where I remember she was chasing somebody and they got into a car and she did her spin move thing. And next thing you know, she's got a helmet and like, you know, elbow pads on and stuff. And she jumps on a skateboard and starts chasing these guys in a car. And I remember thinking, man, she has gone fast. She's like soaring down this hill at like 90 miles an hour. And I think I was like probably covering my eyes because I thought she was going to fall. But eventually she catches up to the guys and like punches them or something. But I'll never forget that episode.
This, but there's some broad on a skateboard coming after us. And she's gaining.
And of course she had her staple wristbands that blocked bullets and her magic lasso that would make people tell the truth and everything. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there was even a couple episodes where she flew around in her invisible jet. But I'm not 100% sure on that one. And The Greatest American Hero, I love that show as well. And what's unique about that show is that it was kind of like a comedy because it was just kind of a silly premise, but a neat premise where this guy gets his superhero suit from a spaceship and he drops the directions on the ground so he doesn't know how to use it. And so every episode he's like crashing into stuff and he's flying, you know, like this. And he doesn't really know how to use his powers.
You're gonna make it. Now, all you do is you keep your head up, you point your toes. You're gonna learn this now, I'm telling you, I promise. Hey! I'm doing it!
And also, it was unique in that it was a superhero that I wasn't familiar with. I don't think there was any comics or anything like that. It was just a TV show. But I remember thinking how funny that show was. I think it only ran for a couple of seasons. But most notably is it gave birth to the probably best opening theme song in TV history. That song, I think everybody knows that song. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. But out of all of them, I'd have to say my favorite was probably the live-action Spider-Man show. Not that it was probably the best show, but Spider-Man is and was my all-time favorite superhero. So to see him on the TV screen back then was just so cool. I do remember, though, being disappointed in that he didn't have the white eyes like he had in the comics and the cartoon. He had these kind of cheesy, like, sunglasses kind of thing. And his web shooters were on the outside of his costume, which in the comics and the cartoon, you never saw them. So I remember thinking as a kid that was kind of weird. But that show was really, really fun. I mean, again, it's kind of hard to watch now, I think. But I do remember one specific episode. It might have even been a movie, because they had a couple, I think, TV specials or movies or whatever. But there was this one scene where he fights like these three ninjas. I think they had like swords or sticks or something. And I remember as a kid thinking how cool it was that he beat up these three ninjas.
Kill him.
I'll go in the backyard and take a rope or a jump rope, and I'd tie it around my swing set and act like I shot it up there and swing and everything. And I just always loved Spider-Man. So you might watch some of these shows now and kind of laugh at them and think they're cheesy or dated. But having your favorite superheroes represented on TV in live action as a kid in the 80s was really cool. And I think a couple of the shows at least were really well done. I'd say especially The Hawk. Was a really good show, and I think it actually probably ran the longest as well out of all of them. And The Greatest American Hero, I think, was a really well done show as well. Wonder Woman and Spider-Man, I guess a little in the cheese factor. They're actually from the 70s, late 70s, but I watched them in the 80s. But altogether, I just really loved, as a kid, having those shows to watch, and they were just fantastic to me. Alright, so there you have it, AT. Yet another time fragment repaired. And I just noticed this was one of the first times we didn't have to use any of your lightning. So what do you think? Hey! What the heck? Why'd you do that? You know I don't like people seeing me without my hat.
Why? So people don't see your 5 head?
Oh, like I haven't heard that one before. Well, what about you? What are you, a game console or a log cabin? And what about that voice? What are you up to, 5 packs a day now?
Is your favorite place to shop the Gap?
Oh, no, you didn't. Your mother's a Genesis. I'm sorry. I crossed the line. I'm sorry. I deserve your silence.